In the last 24 hours, there has been a dramatic escalation of activity on Israel's northern border as the IDF eliminated a senior Hezbollah field commander, and the Iranian-backed terrorist group responded with a barrage of 215 rockets as well as anti-tank missiles and drones. No casualties were reported in Israel, but several large forest fires broke out as a result of the rockets landing in dry areas filled with bushes and trees. Other developments include Israel's increased attacks on Hezbollah positions in Syria in order to weaken the terrorist group ahead of a possible major conflict. Also, in Gaza, the IDF has secured the entire Philadelphi Corridor, but suffered a heavy loss in Rafah as 4 soldiers were killed in a booby-trapped building. Meanwhile, Hamas continues making absurd demands that Israel agree to unilaterally lose the war as a precondition to begin peace talks. Let's dive into the details. I'm Yair Pinto, and this is your Boots on the Ground report about what is happening in Israel on the 251st day of the war against Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran. We begin today's report in the north. In the last 24 hours, over 215 rockets as well as other weapons were fired into Israel by the Iranian-backed terrorist group Hezbollah. Several fires broke out and burned thousands of acres of forest and agricultural land. The unusually large barrage came following the elimination of a Hezbollah field commander, Taleb Abdullah, who was the most senior Hezbollah operative eliminated so far in this war, according to Hezbollah's own admission. In their statement to the press about the incident, they said that Abdullah, also known as Abu Taleb, was the commander of the El Nasser unit in the organization's southern front. He was eliminated along with 3 other terrorists in an IDF attack overnight Tuesday in the village of Juvia in southern Lebanon. According to IDF intelligence, this evil man was responsible for several terrorist attacks against Israeli citizens in recent years. The El Akbar newspaper in Lebanon, which is known to be close to Hezbollah, defined the assassination as a hard blow, adding that Abu Taleb was one of the most prominent leaders in the current conflict since October 7th. The newspaper also published photos of Abu Taleb together with Radwan Force Commander Wissam El-Tawil and with Iranian Quds Force Commander Qasem Soleimani, both senior officers who were assassinated in previous strikes by the United States. Naturally, he also maintained relations with Hezbollah's Secretary General Hassan Nasrallah. For all of this and more, Abu Taleb has been in Israel's crosshairs for a very long time. He was active in Hezbollah going all the way back to 2005, and more recently, when Hezbollah entered the campaign against Israel in October, he led the attacks on Manara, Metula, Margaliot, Kiryat Shmona, and more Israeli communities on the northern border with Lebanon. He is a very guilty man involved in terrorism. The IDF estimated that his elimination would result in a response of massive fire, but one that would not expand the fighting beyond the general scope of what has been carried out until today. However, the assassination of such a high-ranking operative is not only a difficult blow for Hezbollah, it's also a humiliation. Hezbollah is now doing damage control, and it is likely that in the near future they will try to exact a heavy price from the IDF. They might attempt to target a senior IDF officer, elite military forces, or even security facilities of strategic importance to Israel. Although Nasrallah is constantly trying to cautiously expand the range of provocations, he is not interested in a widespread conflict or an all-out war. It's a difficult balancing act for him, and even a small miscalculation could result in disaster. At the moment, he is increasing fire on Western Galilee and the Hula Valley using drones as well as rockets, causing few casualties but massive damage, especially because of the fires that these attacks start. The battle continues, and despite Israel's technological superiority, Iran has given Hezbollah such a massive arsenal in recent years that it could change the equation with Israel. According to sources in the Quds Force, Hezbollah's weapon arsenal now includes over 1 million missiles and rockets of various types. Among other things, the terrorist organization possesses accurate and improved Katyushas, drones, and suicide drones armed with Russian-made rockets. However, the weapon that should worry Israel the most, according to the report, is the Iranian-made Almas missile that was inspired by the Israeli Spike developed by the Rafael company. It is an anti-tank missile with a launch and forget mechanism that allows the shooter to aim at the target and change positions quickly. According to the IDF estimates, if an all-out war breaks out with Israel, Hezbollah will be able to launch an average of 3,000 weapons into Israeli territory every day for at least 10 days. There is an assumption that such a war would last at least 2 months, and Hezbollah would continue to have the ability to fire over 1,000 weapons into Israel up until the very end. These are, of course, estimates based on the best available intelligence, and there are many things that could happen in a war that might change things for the better or for the worse. If the IDF launches a ground maneuver into southern Lebanon, that would obviously change many things, and it could mean the war ends much sooner, or that the volume of fire into Israel will get lower much faster. Or not. It's very difficult to predict. But one thing we can say clearly and loudly is that as bad as all the damage Hezbollah's weapons would cause to Israel, the damage to South Lebanon would be much worse. In short, South Lebanon would be sent back to the Stone Age. Here at TBN Israel, we will continue to update you on the latest developments on the northern border. In fact, this coming weekend, my weekly series, My State, will be released, and this time we will go into Jerusalem during Jerusalem Day, the day that marks the unification of Jerusalem back to Israel. Please continue to spread the truth, share, and follow us. And most importantly, take a minute and press the follow button, subscribe to this YouTube channel so that together we can share the truth as far as possible. Moving on to the news from the Gaza Strip. It seems that the grandiose project of the American administration has failed in helping the civilians of Gaza. While the world and the International Criminal Court in The Hague accuse Israel of starving the Gaza Strip, an investigation by the Wall Street Journal reveals the deficiencies in the construction of the floating port near the Gaza city. These deficiencies caused tons of humanitarian aid not to be transferred into the Gaza Strip. As you may recall, the floating pier, which cost around $320 million to build, was established against the background of the IDF's advance in Rafah in the closing of the 2 southern border crossings that provided most of the aid to the Gaza Strip. The maritime corridor between Cyprus and Gaza and the aid drop from the air were intended to complement the land shipments, which are cheaper and more efficient. But the hastily built pier was never designed to handle the stormy Mediterranean Sea, which is expected to get even stormier as the summer progresses. The floating construction fell apart at the end of the previous month after only 10 days of operation, a fact that some security officials in the United States had warned was inevitable. Meanwhile, some humanitarian organizations have almost given up trying to make long-term plans to deliver aid using this pier. The pier was repaired after the damage it suffered last month and put back in place, but on Sunday it was once again shut down due to the rough weather, according to the Pentagon. It was back in operation Tuesday, and we'll have to see how long it continues to operate this time. In any case, the saga of the success of this pier is a reflection of the Biden administration's struggle to deal with the humanitarian situation in Gaza. 3 months after the president announced the establishment of the facility during his State of the Union address, very little aid has actually reached Gaza this way. We will continue to update you on this topic. Keep spreading the truth, share, and follow us. Take a minute to click the follower button and subscribe to this YouTube channel so that the truth will go to the rest of the world and that we can unite in prayer for the peace of Jerusalem and the situation here in Israel. Getting back into the news about the events in the Gaza Strip, soldiers from the Givati Brigade are operating in the Savora neighborhood in the Rafah area under Division 162. They are destroying terrorist infrastructure and eliminating armed terrorists above and below the ground while conducting precise combat based on intelligence information. During one engagement this week, terrorists emerged from a building and fired on the troops, who fired back and eliminated their attackers in a fierce battle. The IDF soldiers immediately moved into the area where the terrorists had emerged and discovered a large cache of weapons and ammunition, as well as the entrance to a tunnel that the terrorists had used to move into position for their attack. The tunnel was searched and then prepared for demolition. This was just one of several tunnels and underground bunkers that have been discovered and demolished in the Rafah area over recent days. Unfortunately, there was also a tragic incident for the IDF in the Shavora neighborhood of Rafah this week. The IDF spokesman allowed publication this morning of information that 4 soldiers in the Givati brigade were killed when an explosion, possibly caused by a booby trap, led to the partial collapse of a building they were examining. 5 other soldiers were seriously wounded in the incident. Other details have emerged in the days since the incident. The Givati soldiers were operating in a combined operation with soldiers from the Nahal brigade, and there were clear indications that the building needed to be approached with great caution. Proper procedures were followed, and the commander of the unit's training company led them into the building after charges meant to set off any booby traps had been set off. However, the charges meant to set off the booby traps in the building failed in this purpose, and shortly after the patrol entered the building, an explosion occurred which led to the partial collapse of the roof and the walls. The wounded were evacuated by helicopters of Unit 669, which were landing in the area for the first time. The building was the home of a Hamas operative who was involved in the kidnapping of Gilad Shalit, and an investigation of the area uncovered a tunnel shaft that led to an underground chamber. Before I conclude this video, I would like to make a comment on diplomatic developments related to this war. Last week, the United States administration passed a plan for a ceasefire deal between Israel and the terrorist organization Hamas. But Hamas has rejected that deal and made an utterly absurd counter-proposal, which amounts to Israel agreeing to unilaterally lose this war in return for nothing whatsoever. This decision by Hamas gives Israel important advantages that it did not have just a few days ago, especially since Israel is the party which originally initiated the deal that Hamas has just rejected. The United States Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, aligned himself with Israel at a press conference in Qatar, saying that Hamas has made changes to the deal at hand. Israel agreed to the proposal. Hamas did not. If Hamas continues to say no, it will be clear to the world that they have decided to continue the war they started. This rhetorical support from American Secretary of State Antony Blinken is very significant, as it will serve Israel in the continuation of the war effort in Gaza. In the absence of a deal, there is no other alternative but the continuation of military pressure to promote the return of the hostages and the defeat of Hamas. That having been said, rescuing the remaining hostages remain a very difficult problem that we must solve. The IDF estimates that the operation in Rafah will be completed within 2 to 3 weeks, at the end of which the second phase of the war in Gaza will also end. After that, the IDF will move to raids of varying scopes and frequency in the Gaza Strip. Here at TBN Israel, we will continue to update you on developments going forward, so please continue to spread the truth with us. If you want to see more videos like this one coming from Israel, please consider making a financial donation to tbn.org/Israel or donate directly through YouTube by clicking the donate button. I want to conclude by paying my last respects to the heroic IDF soldiers who lost their lives defending the state of Israel. These are the names of 4 fighters in the Givati patrol who were killed in a bomb explosion that caused the collapse of part of a building in Rafah. The fallen are Major Tal Peshensky, 24 years old, from Gedera; Sergeant Eitan Karsborn, 20 years old, from Modi'in; Sergeant Almog Shalom, 19 years old, from Kibbutz Hamediyah; and Sergeant Yair Levin, 19 years old, from Givat Harel. Please join me in prayer for their families, that God will comfort them. And please continue to spread the truth, share, and follow us, and subscribe to this YouTube channel. This war is being fought on multiple fronts, and sadly we are losing the front for the public's opinion. So please help us share what really is happening so that people can unite in prayer for the situation, for the peace of Jerusalem, for the IDF soldiers, and for all of the Middle East.
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/Israel. Thank you.